Conservative Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito has been missing. Now I'm going to tell you what we know. I'll give you what maybe is the most likely and relatively benign explanation, and then I will tell you what is the sort of darkest speculation associated with this. I think it's fair to say that Alito's absence is raising some flags, if you understand what I'm saying. Newsweek reports Samuel Alito's absence from Supreme Court raises questions. Okay. Justice Samuel Alito was absent from the Supreme Court 2 days in a row last week. The court has not provided an explanation for Alito's absence Thursday and Friday. The conservative justice's absence is notable because the court is issuing decisions before the end of its term. It could mean the court extends its term into July to issue opinions in the remaining undecided cases. Newsweek has contacted a Supreme Court spokesperson for comment via email. Presumably, they have not received such a comment so far. And as some of you know, in the coming days, the justices are expected to rule on whether former President Trump is immune from prosecution for his efforts to overturn the 2020 election, and whether Trump supporters who stormed the Capitol on January 6, 2021, can be prosecuted for obstructing an official proceeding. Alito has rejected calls to recuse himself from such cases, despite the fact that his wife, Martha Ann, flew flags above their homes that were controversial, including an upside-down American flag and an Appeal to Heaven flag, both carried by rioters on January 6th. So listen, in all seriousness, if you say, what's the most likely explanation? It's probably some health thing or personal matter that they don't necessarily want to talk about. Is that okay? I don't know. Is it morally and ethically acceptable by the Supreme Court's own rules, which are, of course, completely unenforceable? Maybe. I don't know. But that's the most likely thing. And in a sort of normal world where we don't have scandal after scandal and controversy after controversy involving the apparent political bias of the Supreme Court, we would say, you know, maybe he had a colonoscopy or whatever, and he was just out and didn't want to announce it. I don't know. Okay. What else is a possibility, though? In all seriousness, the most ominous, dark interpretation is that this is all connected to an attempt to delay Donald Trump's trials to the extent that it is possible. Let me explain to you how that would work. And again, remember, this is all speculation. The court's not giving us information, at least not yet. So we are left to speculate. I already gave you the most likely and benign explanation. Now I'll tell you what is making some people concerned. Alito's absence, at least in theory, could mean that the court extends its term into July to issue opinions into the remaining undecided cases. There are only a few days left to say whether Donald Trump has immunity against prosecution. If they say Trump does not have immunity, then the judge in D.C. has said, we're going to give the defense 90 days before the start of the case. So if you take July 1, you go 90 days forward. That's August, September, October 1, first week of October. On the other hand, if this gets delayed, it could, at minimum, delay the end of that trial until after the election, and it could even delay the start of the trial until after the election. If Alito is trying to figure out a way to delay the trial, one could concoct a scenario in which, even though the rest of the justices don't have to wait for dissenters, let me put it a different way. Imagine that the outcome is going to be there is no immunity. Trump doesn't have immunity, but it's 5-4. Just as an example, the 5 are not required to wait for the 4 to write their dissenting opinions before issuing a ruling. They're not required to. But sometimes out of collegial courtesy, they do. And if the majority 5 that say Trump doesn't have immunity, he's going to have to face this trial, say, you know, Alito's missing, let's wait for Alito to come back. And July 1st becomes July 10th, for example, and then the 90 days becomes October 10th, and that's really just days, weeks before a presidential election. And the judge says, that really seems to be trouble. We're going to have Trump in court on election day. I don't know. It doesn't sound right. Let's delay the trial until after the election. And then if Trump wins, then maybe they say, a trial of a president-elect. I don't know. Let's delay. And you can see the way that this would go. This is completely speculative because even if this were all true, the majority doesn't have to wait for the dissenters to write and finalize their opinion before publishing the majority opinion. They don't have to, but they might. And so we have no idea. We have no information right now. It could be the most benign explanation I mentioned at the beginning, or it could be this much darker explanation that I'm mentioning now.